So we're going to launch into our discussion of business ethics. Before we get into that, let's ask a question here. What's ethics in general? Ethics is the study of right and wrong, of good and evil, of just and unjust, in the broadest possible sense. Okay? Business ethics is a subset of that. Is the study of good and evil, right and wrong, just and unjust actions within the context of businesses. Now, all managers at some point are going to face some sort of an ethical conflict. And one of the things that we're going to do with these modules is try to help you understand your own reasoning, your own trains of thought, so that you can figure out how to negotiate these kind of amorphous gray areas of business ethics. Fortunately, applying very clear guidelines, having good SOPs and good regulation can resolve the overwhelming majority of these ethical problems. You can tell an employee, black and white, this is how you do something, this is how you don't do it. This is absolutely right for this firm, this is absolutely wrong for this firm. And that'll resolve 90% of it. Of course, they may make a mistake the first time, but then you show them the regulation, they don't repeat it. But it's all those other areas where you as a manager and your employees may have difficulty negotiating. Pardon me. So, general ethical traditions that apply to business support the basic ethical standards you find anywhere else. Truth-telling, honesty, protection of life, limb, and eyesight, respect for human rights, fairness, obedience to the law. And hopefully that's not too surprising for anyone. But there are a lot of difficult problems that may be a little bit more challenging, A, to solve, and B, to recognize. One of the interesting things about ethics is it does apply to the social contract. It may be very difficult to get rid of unethical behavior, but fortunately, when there has been unethical transgression or an ethics transgression, most people can recognize, hey, you were ethical up to this point, but here now you have crossed some sort of a line and now you're behaving unethically. Some of these decisions, of course, can be difficult because, yes, there are basic standards that we all agree on, but there's always that gray area in between those basic standards, and this is what we have trouble understanding. Furthermore, sometimes the ethics issues are just hidden. We don't even recognize them as problems. So here's a couple of theories that we can go with. That pen just isn't going to work, is it? Let's try this one. So we've got the theory of amorality, and the theory of moral unity. Let's compare these two for a second. The theory of amorality states that business should be conducted without any sort of a special reference to the full range of ethical standards, restraints, and ideals in society. So your behavior within the context of a business is kind of like in this isolated bubble, and whatever goes on in general society, it doesn't count. Think of the differentiated individual ontology if you watch that video. Okay? That's a great example. When I am in business, I act this way. When I'm in society, I act this way. And my duties as a citizen or a member of a government, I act this way. And they're completely different standards of ethics or morals. Okay? Now, some of you are thinking, well, when does that even come up? I mean, no, it's always the same. That's probably what you're thinking, right? Think about the fact when someone says, oh, you're playing poker, and they say, oh, you lied. No, it was a bluff. This is poker, that's okay. Some of you may play Grand Theft Auto, but when you turn off the video game console, I'm certain that you don't start shooting people or dealing drugs or any of that other stuff that goes on in that video game, right? Same thing in business. I have known people that as managers, they are complete predators in the workplace. And yet when you see them outside of the workplace, they're giving to charity, working at the soup kitchen, they're dedicated family people. I mean, it is a night and day kind of difference. And that is a great example of the theory of amorality. Theory of moral unity. That says that business actions are judged by general societal ethical standards, not this special set of permissive standards. So behavior that occurs in the workplace also has to be behavior that is acceptable at home, as a member of society, government. Everywhere you go, the same kind of behavior always has to be okay. So if you're playing poker, you can't bluff in poker because you don't bluff with your spouse and you don't bluff in the workplace. You don't play Grand Theft Auto and do all that bad stuff because you're not going to do those bad things when you're not playing a video game on the console. That's theory of moral unity. The same ethical standards always apply at all times. Now there's some different sources that we generally attribute to our ethical values to. Of course, the first would be religion. Religion is probably one of the greatest sources of ethical norms, and even if you're not a particularly religious person, you are typically influenced by the culture stemming from a particular religion based on your geographic location. Most of us that live in the West, whether you're Christian or not, are influenced by Judeo-Christian values. And so things that are right and wrong defined in common law probably come from the Bible. If you go to the Middle East, for example, whether someone is Muslim or not, nonetheless the Quran is also a source of an understanding of right and wrong in those societies. Of course, philosophy is another great source of guidance and ethics. There's still a lot of debate, of course, about the right action among philosophers. People like St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas believe that all humans should follow God's will. Think of the undifferentiated individual ontology that we discussed earlier in this course. So correct behavior in business and all worldly activity was an imperative if you wanted to achieve salvation and life after death. So you couldn't just be bad in business and good at home and a member of the community. You had to be good all the time. Others had a very different opinion. Immanuel Kant always looked to find some sort of a universal and objective ethical rules based on logic. Again, that's the undifferentiated individual ontology. Jeremy Bentham talked about the principle of utility. We'll talk quite a bit about that throughout this course. And utility is the idea that it's the greatest amount of pleasure but the least amount of pain. So you do the thing that provides the greatest amount of enjoyment and goodness and the least amount of pain. Of course, the question that stems from that is pleasure and pain for whom? John Locke, from the Enlightenment period, thought that human rights were inalienable and belonged to all people. There were certain things that no matter where you went, people were entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And as long as you respected those things, you were to an extent an ethical person. Of course, there were also the realists, and they believed that people are always a little good and a little bad, usually at the same time, and that's kind of inevitable. Machiavelli, some of you have probably read The Prince, believed that the ends justified the means. You could do bad things as long as it was for a good cause. Compare that to Herbert Spencer, who said that basically the strongest survived, and it was vicious competition that furthered evolution, irrespective of how ethical or unethical certain people's actions were. Nietzsche, another philosopher, said that nice ethics were what he called the Jesus mentality, and it was basically a way to intimidate or to fetter the will of the strongman, the Uberman, or the Ubermensch, or the Overman, from taking control. So Nietzsche believed that might makes right, but it was things like Judeo-Christian values that kept the strong down. Of course, cultural experience also is very germane to our understanding of ethics. So we've talked about religion, we've talked about philosophy, now we're looking at culture. And there are different kinds of values that have sprung up based on kind of levels of human development. You think about the hunting and gathering stage. You know, when you have primitive man wandering around in these nomadic tribes, obviously in those cases, might made right. The hunter who could fight off the bear or the lion was the strongest and the one that people looked to for inspiration. Not necessarily because he or she was a nice person, but because they were the strongest. In the agricultural stage, I mean, this is when you start having a very large shift in values. People start settling down, and people start accumulating material wealth and possessions. And, of course, we talked about this previous in our business history. There becomes a debate not about might makes right, but is the pursuit of profit and material goods ethical or unethical? And then the industrial stage, where the pursuit of material goods or materialism has more or less conquered all. And does that mean that overconsumption is a positive thing or not? But you see, even though there are debates between different stages of human development, the nature of those debates has fundamentally changed over time. Now, we also have to deal with ethical universalism and ethical relativism when we talk about cultures. Those of you that have seen my ontology videos are already familiar with this. I hope you can see that pen. So ethical universalism says that human nature everywhere is exactly the same, and the same basic rules apply in all situations at all times. Again, that would be something like the undifferentiated individual ontology or the undifferentiated relational ontology. Certain things, no matter where you go in the world, are always considered right or wrong. Almost every country in the world accepts the fact that killing is something that is a negative. Stealing is something that is negative. Almost variations on the Ten Commandments. Most people agree that those are bad things. But there's also ethical relativism, and that says that values are created by cultural experience. Now, different cultures create different values based on education, environmental constraints, and experience. However, we talk about which is right, ethical universalism or ethical relativism, and this is the classic example of Plato's theory of forms. Plato would say that we would all agree on certain general principles validating ethical universalism, but according to ethical relativism, our application or the ways that we react in specific situations is what varies. Let me give an example here. Look at the Bible for a second. The Bible talks about all sorts of things that are right and wrong, like the Ten Commandments. From an ethical universalism perspective, most people would agree that the things in Ten Commandments it's a good code to follow and you can apply it wherever you go. Most people would not have a problem with that statement. But the specificities of how to apply that comes from like the law, right? So when you go to one country or another, when they say thou shalt not kill, okay, we all agree, don't kill people, that's a bad thing. But then we start talking about, in different countries with different laws, well, that was an honor killing, so it was okay. This was third-degree murder, not second-degree murder. All these kinds of different things. Well, what if you accidentally run over somebody on a motorcycle? Is that killing or not? And so you start getting into all these little specificities, and that's where ethical relativism comes into play. So general principles, we can say ethical universalism, yes. But the specific understandings of how to apply those universal principles is where relativism becomes important. Which, since I was just talking about law and ethical relativism, law is also an important source of ethics. And laws, a la ethical relativism, are a way to codify or formalize our ethical expectations. We all agree that being good or courageous or having integrity is a good thing, but the law gives us an opportunity to look it up in a written down way based on precedent to say, you know what, this is courageous behavior and this is not. It gives us specific cases to work with. And of course, corporations have to face the law, especially with regards to ethics, on a regular basis to help them deter illegal acts within their firms, to help them punish offenses, and to rehabilitate offenders. Of course, we also, when we talk about the law and ethics, those individuals who behave in an unethical manner or violate the social contract or the law in some way may face two different kinds of damages, two different kinds of punishments. And that's where we have compensatory damages. And punitive damage. So a compensatory damage basically means a payment awarded to redress some sort of an actual, hard, concrete loss suffered by an injured party. So imagine that you're in my class and I'm one of those crazy professors like you see on YouTube, you know, you're talking on the cell phone, I snatch the cell phone out of your hand and I throw it on the ground and I smash it. You can say, you know what? He smashed my cell phone and it's worth $685 and I've got a receipt to prove it. And I would pay you that $685 because that's compensatory damage to help you be whole again from a material perspective. Punitive damages, on the other hand, are typically in excess of the actual losses, and they're designed to deter similar actions from a corporation that's exhibited some sort of a reprehensible conduct. So for example, I take that phone and I smash it, and you say that's $685, but I want another $5,000 so that my professor knows not to do that again, and other professors also know, no, you cannot smash a student's cell phone in the middle of the class. Okay? Think of also, I'll use the McDonald's example. Some of you may remember, this happened when I was a kid. There was a lady in a drive-thru at McDonald's. She had hot coffee. I guess she put the coffee between her legs to hold it while she was driving to work. And somehow or another, the coffee got out, it spilled all over her legs, burned her real bad because that coffee was almost boiling when they would put it in the cups. So she went to the hospital and had to get treated for her severe burns. That was, I don't know, let's say it's $10,000. But there's a receipt for that. It cost $10,000 to go to the emergency room, and maybe there was some lost wages or something like that. But either way, it's a calculable financial cost. Let's say $10,000. But the punitive damages were much greater. They were in the millions of dollars because the court wanted to tell McDonald's, you will not make that coffee too hot ever again, and let other fast food companies know, no, making coffee that hot is not an acceptable practice. So you will pay not only just for her medical treatment, but you will pay to make sure that that never happens again. So we should care about business ethics, basically because managers who violate the social contract can of course be prosecuted for these criminal actions. They can be held criminally liable. Corporations, of course, are a little bit harder to prosecute than individual managers because a corporation is a legal person, but it's not a real person. So you can't necessarily put a corporation in jail because it's not a physical person, but you can make them pay financial restitution or you can dismantle the company. We have a couple of kind of different punishments that are available to corporations, and our first is, of course, white-collar crime. And white-collar crime is basically when an individual has broken the law in some sort of a non-violent way. They have cheated, they have been deceptive in the course of employment, and it's been done for personal or corporate gain. So they stole money or they lied on taxes or something like that. Then we also have deferred and non-prosecution agreements. How's that pen working? So a deferred or non-prosecution agreement. And I will put all of these terms down in the comments too, so don't worry. So a deferred prosecution agreement basically means that a firm and a prosecutor agree to delay prosecution while the company tries to take some sort of remedial actions to fix what they did wrong. A non-prosecution agreement means that the prosecutors will not take action against a corporation if they have decided to report a crime, cooperate and compensate victims. Now some of you are asking, well, why even do that? Well, you think about it. If a prosecutor goes after a firm and they levy such horrendous damages against them that they go bankrupt, then the victims don't really get compensated. By allowing the corporation to try to make it right by themselves, there's a chance that the firm will continue to exist and actually be able to honor those commitments. Furthermore, let's be honest. U.S. attorneys, they've got a lot going on. It's a lot easier to make the corporation do all the work than it is to take the case to trial. Big distraction, and again, the damages might not even get paid anyhow. And then you've also got a monitor. And a monitor is typically a consultant, but it could be a government official. And they're hired by the corporation to oversee some sort of a fulfillment based on an agreement to avoid a criminal indictment. They're the ones that are making sure that the terms of the defer to the non-prosecution agreement are met. So, we're going to stop here for now. We will continue our discussion with the different forces that shape corporate ethics. I'm looking forward to seeing you then. We've got a couple of great videos ahead. We'll see you then.